The Vedic account of creation, briefly, it states that, first of all, there's unmanifested material energy, which could correspond to the singularity in the Big Bang theory. And then, interestingly, according to the Vedas, the first element to appear is sound. Like the Big Bang, they say that it first started with the Big Bang. And then afterwards, the elements appear in a sequence. It's a very consistent sequence. The subtle elements, and then they convert into the gross elements and the organs of action and so on, organs of action and perception. Arthur Young, he's describing the first cause. He says, the physical universe has its source in and is derived from a prior or transcendent unity, a primordial unity or first cause, essentially non-material and spiritual in nature. First cause is immanent as well as transcendent. So he's immanent means that it's working here. So this is what I'm calling the universal self. But he says it's also transcendent, means it's outside the universe as well. So in the Vedic account, the Vedic worldview, there's the Supreme Personality, Krishna, Vishnu, Govinda, exists beyond the universe, and he manifests the universe, which comes into existence, by expanding himself as the universal self. And the universal self manifests the universe, and then finally deconstructs the universe. But the Supreme Personality exists the whole time. So Arthur Young is completely in line with the Vedic point of view. He says, no matter, it's ever the nature of the first cause that it is completely without limitation, without qualification, without antecedent. No matter how vast our finite knowledge, it can never circumscribe that which is infinite. In other words, he's saying that this potency is inconceivable, this entity is inconceivable, and material science can never get at it. So the Vedic system is very consistent, and it's self-consistent as well. It includes the conscious processes by which we understand the elements, and it also includes knowledge itself. So it means that it's saying that our worldview is based on consciousness, and therefore our world is also based on consciousness. And not only it's pointing out the way to go to find knowledge, but it's pointing out what are the elements and how they interact and so on. So the Vedic worldview is so far superior to all human effort, the sum of all human effort, that it appears to be divinely inspired, which of course is what we say, that it's not coming from the logical, it's not coming from self-realized saints, but it's actually given directly from the first cause, from the universal personality. Scientific knowledge. I want to compare the two systems very briefly. We need knowledge that's complete. We need knowledge that's certain. We don't want to be guessing. We want knowledge that I can agree on, you can agree on, Muslims can agree on, Christians can agree on, naturalists can agree on, anyone can agree on them, that they're universal principles, so that we can get together and mend society, heal society and heal the world, because we made a mess of it. To do that we have to have certain knowledge, and we have to have complete knowledge. Penrose says that knowledge that doesn't include understanding of consciousness can never be complete. So our knowledge has to include consciousness and also the basis of the universe. We can't just say that it's come out of nothing causelessly. These fables. How can we get certain knowledge? Well, there's a limit to our certainty. We can't, for example, I can't prove that you exist. I assume that you do. I assume that I'm not living in a hallucination. I assume that I'm not dreaming. I assume that this is reality, but I can't prove it. So we can't prove anything absolutely. But if we accept a given frame of reference, then within that frame of reference we can have a certain degree of certainty. So, for example, we commonly accept that the world exists, really. The physical scientists also accept that the world exists, really. So within that framework, then we can be sure that the basis of the scientific process is real. And we can be, if we analyze, then we come up with entities which are self-evident and self-validating. Self-evident means that I can see it directly. I don't have to hear about it by rumour. Like, I assume the North Pole exists, but I don't know for sure from direct experience. I assume that something like electrons exist, but I don't know, I've never seen one. Protons, quarks, I don't know, I've never seen them. So, self-evident entities are things that I can see directly. But not only that, they're self-validating. It means that you can't substitute them for anything simpler. I can take this video camera to pieces, in principle, into its separate parts. But I can't take vision into its separate parts. I can't take myself into separate parts. So these are self-validating entities because you can't analyze them further. In fact, if you try to deny them, if I say that there's no such thing as knowledge, well, that's a kind of knowledge. If I say that I can't find a self, no matter where I look, I can't find a self. But who's looking? So the I appears in the denial. That means it's a self-validating entity. So knowledge comes, certain knowledge is on the basis of entities that are self-evident and self-validating. And that's the basis of the scientific process, but it's the basis of our interaction with the world as a whole. It's not just the science. Science is a special case. So the conscious faculties, perception, mind, activity, the self, coordinating self, universal self, matter, and the body of the entity, our body. These are all self-evident, and they're also self-validating. They're all part of the process itself. This idea was established. René Descartes tried to establish it, but he couldn't manage in the face of criticisms from the empiricists. But Srila Jiva Goswami, a philosopher who lived in India about 100 years before Descartes, he had already established this. He talked about tattva. Tattva means essential reality. He said, the definition of essential reality is it's true by experience, and you can't substitute anything else for it. You can't analyze it into anything smaller, and you can't put anything simpler in its place. So this principle, this is the principle that we're using. He didn't make up this principle. It was already there in the Vedic wisdom tradition. He was simply expressing it, and now we're expressing it in a modern context to bring us to the point of certain reliable knowledge. We want knowledge which is consistent with known facts and self-consistent also. It means it doesn't contradict itself. The Vedic worldview is consistent with known facts, and it's self-consistent because it talks about knowledge, it talks about the conscious self, and so on. Scientism, mechanistic knowledge, is neither consistent with known facts. For example, they talk about everything coming from nothing. We've never seen that. They talk about life coming from matter. We've never seen that. They talk about one species changing into another. We've never seen that. It's not consistent with known facts. And it's also self-invalidating, because if you say that everything is just physical interactions, so is science. When the scientist talks, it's just like the wind blowing in the trees or frogs croaking in a swamp. There's no more meaning in it at all. So it wipes itself off the board. It's self-invalidating.